Hello everybody and welcome back, where today we're talking about Wallace and Gromit in the Grand Getaway, a 2023 Quest game that finally has come to PSVR 2 today on the 21st of October. So, is it worth it on PSVR 2? I would say maybe, which I know is a very unsatisfying answer, but we'll talk about it. But before we do, only 25% you are sub to the channel, so please feel free to do so, and thank you to our patrons and members as they're all on screen right now. With that being said, let's talk Wallace and Gromit. In a nutshell, the Grand Getaway is just like a short movie of Wallace and Gromit, essentially. It only runs for about 90 minutes or so, across 12 chapters of gameplay, and you solve puzzles and help Wallace and Gromit as their getaway goes wrong. They're meant to be going down south for a holiday, but that doesn't quite go to plan and you end up on Mars. Wallace still insists he wants to do his golfing here, because he doesn't realise that he is on Mars, typical of Wallace, and you have to fix the rocket and get home. That is the gist of it, and it's only about $13 or $9.99 in our UK British coins, so it's really not too expensive. So for about an hour and a half, or maybe a little bit more depending on how fast you are with these quote-unquote puzzles, that might seem like a good deal to you. Plus there's a couple mini games which you can do after the campaign is over, but you're not getting a load of content here, just to be clear. Visually on PSVR 2, to give the game credit where it definitely deserves it, it looks sharp. This is what we expect from Quest ports when they do come along. Wallace and Gromit luckily fits into that kind of Quest style, so you don't notice that it's built for standalone, if that makes sense. But this very much is a Quest port, and luckily it does look sharp on the PSVR 2. The colours of space and Mars pop, but the game does run reprojected. However, you don't really notice that often because it's limited to snap turn. I went into the options, and the only options you really have are for subtitles, and that's about it. There's no movement here, you teleport from point to point, or you're stationary in a room scale style environment, and snap turning is your only option. I would say the Grand Getaway is strong with its writing and humour and charm. The stop motion animation style is copied over fairly well here. There are a couple of moments where Auto Caddy, which is one of the inventions that you play as, although you swap between several characters, does run at a higher frame rate, which looked a little bit weird, but for the most part, the stop motion style is great here. I did also have a moment where Wallace T-posed a couple of times, which was a little bit weird.
See you at the next hole.
What the fuck?
Interesting.
You play most of the game as this Robo-Caddy invention, using different abilities to navigate your way through different puzzles, or you play as Wallace for a tiny bit, or as Gromit for a couple of sections too. Mostly as Robo-Caddy though. And unfortunately as Robo-Caddy you can only teleport from point to point, which is a little bit disappointing. And most of what you're doing is reaching out and getting objects, or pushing buttons, or throwing items. These puzzles that you're presented with are never really that difficult though, and the game doesn't push any boundaries in terms of puzzle solving or VR interactions or mechanics. Each section essentially has different minigames for you to progress, and if you're a Wallace and Gromit fan, I think you'll enjoy your time blasting through these as they feel on brand for the series, but if you're not and are just looking for a VR game or a puzzle game, I would say this probably isn't for you. I did find that when not playing as Robo-Caddy, who has kind of extension arms that allow you to grab further away objects, I did struggle a little bit picking up some items as I didn't seem to want to grab playing as Wallace or Gromit in those limited sections. But when you do grab items and different effects go off, you do get haptics in the controllers, but none in the head from what I can see. The game also has hand tracking on Quest, but they haven't implemented this on PSVR 2 from what I can see, which is a little bit disappointing because from what I can see the hand tracking on Quest does look really fun, and it kind of seems like the game is designed for it, if that makes sense. Everything's in a room scale environment, and because it's point to point teleport, it's clearly designed around that kind of gimmick or that mechanism, so when it's not here it feels like part of the game is stripped away. Looking on the store page as well, it says VR playstyle sitting and standing, although it doesn't say room scale here. I'm going to come out and say though that you do need a room scale space to play this, because several of the actions you'll have to do will be quite far to the left and right and forward and behind you, so you'll need to walk around. If you don't have a big play space, like I actually don't at the moment at my uni accommodation, you're going to struggle here because you'll be hitting into walls and ceilings and all sorts. Multiple times I had to take some steps back and recenter and then continue on because the item that I needed to get was just out of my play space, and I don't think it's advertised as room scale on the store, which I think it should be. When I snap turn as well with an object in my hand, it kind of flung it across the room, so you need to move and turn with your body, rather than snap turn if you lift up any objects for puzzles. There are some sections throughout the game as well where you should be two-handing objects, like for example this carnival shooting section, although the game just doesn't let you can only have one hand on at a time, which just doesn't really let you steady it properly, and I wish that that was implemented. I had subtitles on throughout the game as well, and for the most part, when it was just one line of dialogue that wasn't that long, it was okay. It doesn't take up too much space, but as soon as there starts to be multiple lines or a longer line of dialogue, your subtitles are literally covering half of your screen, which is not the most ideal, and if you want to access the menu or options, you'll need to go back to the main menu and quit out of the story. It's also worth mentioning that although you do get a fair bit of Wallace and Gromit speaking and doing certain things in the game, for the most part you're being actually directed and shown the way by a robot that floats around you. I would have liked a little bit more direct hands-on time with Wallace and Gromit. That sounds really weird now that I'm saying it out loud, but essentially I would have liked a bit more direct involvement from them. Overall though, it is a fun Wallace and Gromit style adventure. As a fan of the series, growing up with it as a kid, I enjoyed my time here. But the VR mechanics are not great. It should have been advertised as a room scale experience. I can't see that currently on the store being the case. I do wish we got hand tracking, and the limited accessibility options are not fantastic. So, if you're a Wallace and Gromit fan, if it's on sale, maybe give it a go if you just want extra Wallace and Gromit content. But if you like escape rooms in VR, this probably isn't going to satisfy you, and the mechanics did let it down a fair bit. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next one.